There have been many people that have influenced me throughout my life to become who I am today. Being from a family of divorce actually helped me because that meant instead of only having two family sides, I got to have four, and that just meant even more people to help me grow up. One of the main people in my childhood was my grandmother. She picked me up from school each day, and she also babysat me throughout the summer. I used to joke that she was the one who really raised me. It made sense though. My mom was a single mother trying to support us, so she worked a lot. But when me and my mom got together, we always had fun. She loved taking me on weekend trips out of town, and we would get Mexican food for supper, which is one of the reasons why I love Mexican food so much. She also sang while doing just about everything, which is probably one of the reasons why I tend to hum, tap, or even sing under my breath almost constantly. On the other side of me is my dad. He always said that he got to be fun dad when I was growing up because he only ever saw me every Friday and Saturday. And then we would go to museums or play putt-putt. But one of our favorite things to do was to go to the movies. He's taken me to probably over 200 movies throughout my life, and some of those have become my favorites. I remember him dragging me to go see Harry Potter when I was in 3rd grade, and now I play on the Firebird Quidditch team. Another important person in my life has been my stepmom, Maria. Maria was the first adult in my life, other than my grandmother, to actually parent me. Growing up, I wasn't a bad kid or anything, but I always set my own boundaries, and Maria pushed me, in a good way, to become a better overall person. When talking about education, there have been several teachers who have influenced the way that I teach and look at things. During my first year at Parkland, the best professor that I have ever had was Professor Larenas. He is my Education 101 teacher and overall mentor during my time at Parkland. He taught me to always check my sources and fueled a love of reading books about education. He got me inspired by people like Diana Ravish, A.S. Neal, and Marva Collins, who all impact my teaching style and philosophy. Another person who has inspired me was my band director, Mr. B. In his class, there was never a moment wasted because Mr. B ran a tight ship. He was able to do all this while having fun and being motivating to his students. One of our band's mottos was, "You got this," and he would say it before every single performance. I'm hoping to run a classroom like that someday. Science has always been a hard subject for me, but in a way, I've always loved the mystery and procedure of it. Back in 5th grade, I actually wanted to become a botanist, and I learned all I could about plants. I also had a passion for weather science and the water cycle when it was taught to me in 3rd grade. I really loved asking questions and learning, though for my grades back then you probably wouldn't have been able to tell. But if you read one of my papers on the subject I loved, you definitely could. I used to read eyewitness books and watch shows like Zoom and Cyberchase on PBS. That was where all of my information came from. I wrote several papers on different types of rocks, and I even wrote a paper about how blueberries grow on a bush and not a vine or a tree. The story behind the blueberry paper was that I couldn't remember whether blueberries grew on a tree or a bush, so I got permission to take home one of my reference books from the library and found my answer. I did that in 4th grade, and I wouldn't have done it without the help of my teacher, Mrs. Golcher. I used to think that I was really good at chemistry in high school. I even wanted to become a pharmacist until I was a senior, but I soon figured out that I was not. There was a teacher in my school named Mrs. Warham, and she was definitely something else. She had a thick southern drawl and walked with a limp. I remember her stories that she used to tell us more than I remember learning anything in that class. But to be honest, her stories were hilarious. The only reason I passed was because everyone passed her class. All her tests came from a study guide that she gave us, and then if we went to a study session, she gave us the answers, and we were also allowed to use these study guides on the actual test. Later in high school, however, I struggled with physics. All of the math and conversions that we had to know really confused me, but I had a few teachers in high school that were really good about helping me, like Mr. Sparks. One more person that has affected my perspective on science, and I honestly didn't know her until last year, was Lori, and she worked with me at the Children's Discovery Museum. She worked in the Innovation Station, which was pretty much just a STEM lab with lots of different activities, such as reverse engineering, bubbles, and even live chickens. With Lori, there was never a dull moment. The stories she used to tell me are amazing, like one about how her husband won't allow her to own a microwave because of an experiment she did that burnt down her kitchen. But it was her enthusiasm for science and for learning that has had the most effect on me and my perspective on science education. When I teach science, I always try and ask myself, what would Lori do? I have difficulties describing scientific concept if I don't fully comprehend it, and I often joke that everything is based on magic. This is something I know I need to get better at, but I haven't really had a good chance so far in my college career to witness an elementary science lesson. I look forward to having a chance to actually see the lessons and plan for them as a student teacher this year. Before taking this course, I had very little idea of how I was going to teach science. As you've seen, my experience has been mainly through books and my own curiosity, but now I know many different strategies to teach science. One of my favorites is using portfolios as a means of assessment, as well as a way for students to see their own growth in a subject. These portfolios are so versatile and can be easily incorporated with graphic organizers and tools for studying, as well as hold long-term projects and class discussion notes. Another bit of information I learned are the 5 E's. Using these as a guide in order to ensure students get a well-rounded science education is super important. It's better than just having them take notes from a PowerPoint. I have also learned that different science standards, which seemed a little intimidating at first, but now are easy to understand and utilize. These standards opened my eyes to all of the different topics covered in elementary school, especially since I couldn't remember exactly what I had learned back then. Overall, this class has taught me how to teach science to the best of my abilities and has given me the tools I need to succeed as an elementary school science teacher.